There's a couple things that you said that were just like they really stood out to me. I happen to be working with a lot of younger people in a coaching capacity. Mid, early to mid 20s, people who are mostly single professionals to some extent, but they're also looking for something more. And a huge question is, what is my purpose? I know I'm supposed to be doing more. I know what I can be doing more, but I'm kind of comfortable in what I'm doing now. And there's this fear that I think a lot of people experience with not wanting to try things. It's like, okay, we've all been programmed that we have to go to school and we have to get the job, and then we just have to stick with that job. But that's not the case. On the contrary, go out and like from what you're saying is experience a ton of different things, identify those talents and skills, because that in the end is going to lead to the discovery of that higher self. Yeah. And it's something I think not enough people are brave enough to do it. I mean, when I was doing it, I was being told I wasn't going to end up getting married because I was challenging things. I wasn't doing the norm, and all these things were being thrown at me for not doing it. But you look at the people who are most successful, I think the people who are happiest with their life, they're the ones who are going out there. They're trying a ton of things. You don't have to, again, I'm going to come back to that quote, right? Everybody says a jack of all trades is a master of none. But the quote continues, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but is oftentimes better than a master of one. It's like you have to try so many different things and learn what works and then apply that. Like you said, apply it in the future. And the other thing there is challenging. I was having a phone call with a young guy from our community. He recently, switched religions, and he was trying this. He was exposed to something, and it really bothered him that something was a certain religious aspect was being done in a certain way. So he wanted to verify with me that this is actually how things are done. And I said, yes and no. So I'm glad you're challenging it, because most people, and it's not just with religion, just in life, we don't challenge what we've been taught. We don't challenge, okay, I'm going to do this because this is how I grew up. And no, challenge it, understand it, make sure you really get why you're doing what you're doing, why you're making those decisions, why you have those beliefs, those values. Because by challenging it, you're going to learn more about yourself, and you're going to, like you said, become more aligned. And it's going to be truer, I think, in a way. It's going to be more real than those who are just kind of doing it. So, again, thank you for sharing that, because that was...
Yeah. And just with your permission, I want to add one more thing onto what Barak was saying. And then, Traci, I want to hear your thoughts about it. What Barak was saying about that individual who was challenging, let's say, a certain religious aspect and just verifying, is this the way how it's done kind of thing? Right. I want to actually share about that. I had an experience where I was in a similar situation, and more in a business capacity. And I saw something, and it just seemed a little bit off. And I walked up to the individual and I asked, did I interpret this situation correctly? And I was more or less challenging it, but it was more also kind of I mean, my ability to challenge allowed me to question, is this considered the norm, or is this considered to be whatever? It turned out that I completely misunderstood the situation. That individual had an opportunity to explain themselves. And then once they explained themselves, oh yeah, it made perfect sense. And that person later on came back to me and appreciated the fact that I, quote unquote, challenged, this thing. And he said, it could have easily gone out of proportion. And how many times do we see this, even in our society? Sometimes that misunderstanding and that assumption, whatever, and we let our brains just escape us. And we could have just avoided all of that by simply verifying, is this what you meant? Is this what you said? Or did I interpret this correctly? Could I be wrong? Could I, So I love that.
I do too. And the way I look at questioning is curiosity. Right? Mm-hmm. We can get back to that inherent natural state of curiosity that we come into the world with, because, it's so interesting that we're not meant to lose it. It's really in our conditioning that we do.
Yeah.
Right.
And when, there's those people who are less, it's harder to condition them. Right. I call them visionaries, where although we're all conditioned, right. And we all have our conditioned, beliefs, that curiosity, when lost, is what we lose. Also, is our ability to build that alignment, right? Because again, it has to come from, it's whether it's a misunderstanding or whether it's just a mismatch.
Right.
We won't know unless we get curious and we lean into that. And so a lot of the practices about neutrality and not taking things personally, and being able to say if somebody's challenging, it's not a personal affront or attack. And even if maybe it is, we don't have to take it that way, right? Because we give the meaning. The other person who's coming and saying whatever they're saying is not giving the meaning I'm giving to what they're doing. I'm giving that meaning. Right. So we have control over the meaning we give to a scenario. So instead of giving it a meaning of, oh my gosh, I'm under attack, we could give it a meaning of, oh my gosh, this is really interesting that this person is coming across this way. I'm curious. I'm going to lean in and ask some questions and try to figure this out so I know where I stand and how to align myself.
Right.
I think that's happening more and more because of the nature of the world in which we live right now. The last 2 or some years have really kind of put this squeeze on us in a variety of marvelous ways. One, it's had us more introspective, right? If people have chosen to take that time to do that, but also two, that alignment piece with that introspection, it's like, do I want to do things the way I used to? Do I want to jump back on that hamster wheel? Is what I was doing for a living what I really, truly am being called to do? Is this relationship what I truly want? Is this environment what I truly want? And it's making us curious because as soon as we ask the questions, we need to go to look for the answers. Right? I mean, I always feel that one of the best, and you both said it, one of the best ways to find the answers that are right for us is to ask those questions. But when we're not asking questions, we're not seeking answers. When I was doing my student teaching, I had taken over a level 4 class because they were in with a level 3 and they were kind of bored silly. And so I said to the teacher who I was working under, hey, can I work with them? I would really love to sink my teeth into this. And they were a pretty, sovereign group of kids. They were pretty bright and everything. So I thought I can't mess them up too much as a student teacher. But what was really great is they were craving more. And they kept saying, what can we do?
Right.
Bring our language, because we love it, to the next level. And so I said, you know what I think? And this was just literally gut instinct, which I always say visionaries are number one place from which they draw information is their gut instincts.
Sure.
But, is how about if you guys start teaching classes instead of me giving you the stereotypical test, right? Every 3 weeks or whatever it is, why don't I have you teaching lessons? Right? And having them, the number of questions that we're being asked, it's no longer is this going to be on the test? Do we need to learn this? Is this important? Not asking me to basically deliver their education to them, but then saying, what do I need to, what do I need to know in order to better understand this? And what was really great is once they got the tools to tap into the knowing, then what they did with it was, they each taught differently. We know that in order to teach something, you really have to understand it. And for them to understand, they had to ask those questions, right? That would lead them to the answers that they sought. So a lot of those early years, even before I became, a teacher of my own classroom, I learned so much just from watching how people do things and sitting back as the visionary I am and going, something's missing. Right. It's like the artist with the canvas. It's just like, oh, okay, I got this, but something's missing. What is that? And then what is my intuition telling me, or what is my higher power telling me, or what, I'm getting a hit coming from somewhere other than my conditioned cranium.
Right.
And let's follow that and see what happens, right? But we can't be too afraid to do that, too afraid to, break the rule. I'm going to say break the rules. I don't the federal ones or anything. Like I'm people to go against the system in that way. But, is really test that for yourself, because otherwise you don't really have buy-in. And if you don't have buy-in in your own life, you're not really living it. No one else is.